Hey guys, you're in a nutshell with me, Ina. Nako, I'm sure nakarinig na kayo ng mga kwento tungkol sa mga naloko nating mga kababayan, yung mga nangarap magpunta ng Canada as temporary foreign workers, nagbayad ng malaki sa mga agencies, sa mga employers na nangakong bibigyan sila ng trabaho dito sa Canada, and yet things don't work out. Yung iba minsan darating dito wala pala talaga yung trabahong sinasabi na meron. Yung iba naman hindi nasusunod. Let's say yung mga napag-usapan sa job contracts nila. Pag ganyan ba, ako na-curious ako, ano mangyayari? Pag ganun, kumbaga parang kapag naloloko sila, anong options ng mga tao na nabibiktima ng mga ganyang scheme? Anyway, yan po ang pag-uusapan natin kasama. For the first time here in a nutshell, isa pong immigration lawyer here in Canada. Of course, kababayan din natin, si Lou Jansen Dangsalan. Yan. Hi, Lou!
Hello, magandang araw sa lahat at salamat sa tangkilik at pag-imbita at hello to everyone who followed your channel.
Oo, no, I'm so thankful. You are my first immigration lawyer. Ayan, puro mga immigration consultant ang mga nakakausap ko kasi for this show. But anyway, I reached out to Lou because we're gonna talk about a case filed in court involving temporary foreign workers na who sued. Basically, class suit ito. An employer who they paid thousands of dollars to, or actually agency ba ang binayaran nila? Baka magkamali ako. Kasi mahinire silang agency, and then when they got to Canada, the job did not exist. Yun yung brief story niyan. Ngayon may update dyan. Sige nga, Lou, I'll show a news report about it, the one I sent you, just so we can discuss it.
Yeah, the case is super recent, 2004, but as we were discussing in the backstage, this case has been more than a decade in the offing. And interesting siya, Ina, kasi sa totoo lang, in a span of like even just a couple of years, alam naman natin, having both worked in the field of journalism and covering government, mabilis magbago ang mga batas, ang mga regulations.
Oo.
So isipin mo yung mahigit isang dekada, ang daming pagbabago sa batas. Pero merong mga common elements across the years na nakikita natin dito na syempre nilitigate nga. At very unique and very interesting itong case na to in a sense na na-mention mo nga kanina, isa siyang class suit. So siguro himayan natin siya. So ano ba kasi yung class action? So kasi kapag meron kang problema at may atraso sa iyo, halimbawa ang isang employer or isang employment agency, according to the law, pwede mo naman talaga silang idemanda, ihabla sa hukuman. Kung anong jurisdiction, kung federal ba ito or provincial. Dahil tandaan natin sa Canada, dalawang levels ng government. So, ang employment law kasi ay jurisdiction ito ng provincial.
Okay.
Samantalang ang immigration naman ay jurisdiction ito ng federal. Kumbaga, may konting shared elements pero more or less it is federal. Legislated siya sa federal level. So, naging interesante siya kasi normally kasi isipin mo kung mag-isa ka as a person who is suing, tapos ihahabla mo nga sila sa hukuman, uphill battle nito, di ba? Una sa lahat yung costs.
Yeah.
Monetary, financial. Pangalawa yung emotional, tsaka yung time. So, dati kasi before I started immigration, just as a nutshell, I started in human rights and employment litigation. So yung emotional cost nito, and alam ko sa cultural aspect natin as Filipinos in Canada, hindi tayo madalas nagdedemandahan.
Natatakot tayo, nahihiya because we don't know our standing here. Lalo na, Lou, kung ikaw isang foreign worker, naka-work permit, you don't want to do anything that you feel na ano bang you're basically unfamiliar with. You're in a foreign land to begin with.
So, ang maganda sa class action suit nga ay merong option para magtipon-tipon at magsama-sama, mag-join forces ang mga plaintiffs, so yung mga nanghahabla sa hukuman at nire-recognize sila as a class para pwede kang sumali or merong mga jurisdictions gaya ng British Columbia na automatic kang kasama sa class basta na-identify ka na ng korte. At in order to not be part of the suit, kailangan actually mag-opt-out ka. So, kung sasaliksikan ninyo, i-research ninyo itong case na to sa Google, halimbawa, makikita ninyo na yung law firms na nagrepresenta ng plaintiff class nito ay meron nga silang notice publicly at kinontak nila as much as they can yung mga tao na members of the class. Parang na-notify sila na, huy, teka, meron kayong potential payout dito kapag na-find liable yung main defendants dito, which were yung agency nga, yung Trident. At nakakatuwa dito yung question mo dito, pati ba Max, sino ba yung may kasalanan, yung agency?
This is a big, big, una sa lahat, high profile yung employer. It's a chain of convenience stores, di ba?
Para siyang, kumbaga, 7-Eleven, di ba?
Correct.
Or napakalaki. So, ayun nga. So, ang question dito, ito kasing si Max, yung convenience store, nag-hire sila ng agency at ng consulting firm for their immigration services and recruitment services. Hindi naman to out of the ordinary.
Nangyayari talaga yan.
Correct. And what happened here is, syempre, in-outsource nila yung trabaho na mag-recruit at mag-asikaso nga ng mga kapapelesan ng immigration. Dahil alam naman natin, marami ito. Ang nangyari, sino ba yung responsible dito sa mga abusong nangyari? So, ang depensa ng MAC, sabi nila, teka, hindi kami yung gumawa. Ang gumawa nito is yung agency na hinire natin. So, ang nakakatuwa dito sa court finding na ito, meron nga din sa 2024 decision dahil alam natin na mahigit isang dekada nga ito sa korte. Sabi nung judge, actually, vicariously liable itong si Max dahil nga within the scope of the agency na minandato nila yung kanilang agent, yung employment recruitment, pati yung immigration consultant nga, para maging responsable din sila financially to compensate the victims of these abuses. Kasi principally ang hinabla or dinemanda is yung Trident nga. Pangalawa, sumunod itong si Max, hinanap nila as a third party liability dahil agent sila. Yung principal defendant nga. So pareho silang magiging source ng compensation for the plaintiff. So ganun ang system ng isang class action. At gaya nga ng sabi ko, final points, by default, in the province of British Columbia, member ka ng class unless you opt out. And if titignan ninyo yung notice na pinadala ng law firm na nagre-representa nga ng plaintiff class, merong option to opt out. Kailangan nilang i-notify yung lawyers nga.
Okay. Pero sige, punta na tayo dito sa latest ruling. Hindi pa naman to, anak ko po, pagpasensyahan nyo na yung anak ko, nagpunta sa likod. But anyway, puntahan muna natin itong latest ruling involving this case. Hindi pa naman talaga final ruling ito. I read a report, parang it's a small win for now. If it goes to trial and it goes, parang ito pa rin ang direksyon na tatahakin, it's really a win for the employers and they might get compensation in the end. So, ano muna tong latest ruling, Lou?
Yung important,
sabi ng court?
Yung important finding nga dito is meron bang fiduciary duty or duty of, under trust or under equity, na meron bang responsibility yung Max? Kasi, dahil hindi nga sila yung direktang gumawa ng actions nung agency at nung consultant, pwede nilang gamiting depensa ka. Teka, hindi kami yun eh. Sila yun, namin. Kaso nakita ng court, pineers nila yung veil of responsibility na, teka, responsible kayo kasi within the scope nga. So yun yung dinetermine nilang issues dun sa latest ruling ng korte. So very important siya kasi number one, una sa lahat, yung agency tsaka yung employment, yung consultancy, maaring wala naman silang resources to compensate all of the members of the class.
Yeah.
Halimbawa, award ng, let's just say, ng $20 million yung court in the end. Tapos, i-divide ito sa members ng class. Let's just say, for example. Ang tanong dito, yung companies ba na dinemanda yung defendants, meron ba silang 10 or 20 million para i-compensate yung plaintiff class? So, dahil na-find liable itong si Max, at tandaan natin, malaki pong korporasyon ang Max.
Oo naman.
They have the pockets and the financial wherewithal to compensate. So, yun yung very big breakthrough dito sa case.
Okay. Oh, ito, basta nakita niyo lang yung subheadline, no? Employer could be held liable for third-party agency errors, the court rules. Okay, kaya ko rin ang gusto pag-usapan talaga tong issue na to, Lou, is because tulad ng sinabi ko nga sa intro, this could be a precedent, no? For, kung sakaling matuloy, kunyari talagang sabihin na, oy, itong employer, kailangan bayaran mo yung mga foreign workers na walang dinatnan na trabaho. Pero is it only because walang nahanap na trabaho? How about the idea of having to pay for the job?
So, ito magandang question ito, Ina, laging pabalik-balik ito. So, simulan siguro natin sa baseline principles. Ano ba yung rules?
Yes.
So, una sa lahat, sino ba ang magbabayad ng alin? So, dalawang actors. Una, yung employer. Pangalawa, yung employee, yung foreign worker. Sa employer side, in order to hire someone from outside, kailangan siguraduhin nila yung employee nila may work permit. And in order for that person to apply for a work permit, itong si employer, kailangan nilang suportahan at sponsor ang kanilang work permit by way of a labor market impact assessment.
Yeah,
unless exempt, di ba? Unless siya exempted dito. Ngayon, kung yung LMIA kailangan trabahuin ng employer, sino ba ang magbabayad? Abay, si employer. So, hindi pwedeng singilin itong si employee in any way, shape, size, or form. Hindi pwedeng i-recuperate or i-recoup yung costs for LMIA. Halimbawa, pwedeng itago. Ang dami kasing ginagawa, nakikita ko na to ever since pa. Yung mga employers, through the recruiters, tinatago nila yung cost of LMIA through recruitment fees. Or through professional legal fees na sinisingil nga ng consultants nila. So, itong si employee, maaring sila ang responsible for the work permit. So, papasok ito dun sa isang tanong mo, Ina, magkano ba usually para sa work permit? Well, it's not really allowed to kind of like fix prices amongst practitioners kasi anti-competitive ito. Nakikita natin yung trend for typical work permit fees is anywhere between $1,000 to $6,000. Depende
sa yun. Okay.
Pag nakita ko, usually, nakapagpunta sa akin yung kaso, nakikita ko na more than 8,000 yung singil just for the work permit kuno. Kung duda na ako kasi usually yung cost kasi ng LMIA nasa mga 4,000 to 6,000 ito for professional fees, tas incidentals for the advertising, etc.
Okay.
So, nakikita 8,000, question mark, ano ba binabayaran ng worker dito? So, hindi lang work permit ito, ang duda ko na. At conservative pa tong 8,000 na. Kasi
Lou, kasi itong 8,000 was paid more than 10 years ago.
Yes,
so, ang laki na nito nung time na yun. Diba, lalo na.
So, ngayon, may mga nakikita ko, 25,000, 30,000.
Yeah.
Work permit ko, no? So, parang nakakapagduda. Yung iba naman, ang ginagawa, yung employers, kinakaltasan. Abay, mas lantaran ito kasi bawal talaga ito. And bawal ito in multiple levels, Ina, just as a final point. Sa federal level, the immigration regulations prohibit this under Section 203 of the regulations, number 1. Number 2, provincial governments across Canada, keep in mind, employment, labor, provincial jurisdiction, pinagbabawal din nila ito. Pangatlo, kung kayo'y galing sa Pilipinas, abay pinagbabawal po ito ng DMW, ng ating Department of Migrant Workers sa Philippines. So, in 3 levels, guys, bawal po itong pangongolekta ng recruiters, ng consultants, ng lawyers, for your LMIA fees. Kasi hindi naman ito sa inyo. Ito ay sa employer. Yung employee, ang liable lang sila is yung work permit application.
Okay. Clarify ko lang, Lua, yung sinasabi mong $1,000 to $6,000, kumbaga yun yung acceptable na, sabihin na natin na rate. Yun yung sisingilin usually nung mga agency rin. Kasi yung iba nagko-course through agencies, yun na yun. They should be wary if it exceeds that. Parang
hindi automatic, pero they should be aware. Magtanong tayo, pero bakit ganito kamahal ito? Ganyan. Ano ba ang binabayaran ko? Work permit lang ba talaga to?
Okay.
Kapag nagkakamot na yung agent, kasi ganito, ganyan. Teka, magtataka talaga ako kasi baka tinock in nila yung recruitment fees, bawal po. At yung LMIA professional and incidental fees, ay bawal na bawal po.
Okay. Let's say na, Lou, eto na. May nagbayad na tayong kababayan. Let's say, somebody paid $15,000. Nakuha naman yung trabaho dito, Lou. Halimbawa na to, hindi to real story, but likely may kikilala yung marami nating kababayan na ganyan. Okay, paid 15,000. Lamia, that's basically what is called Lamia for sale na scheme. Bawal yan talaga, ha, guys. Okay naman yung work. And then makita tong balitang to, yung pinag-uusapan natin. Sabihin niya, halo, so kapag manalo talaga to, pwede ko ba gawin din yan and then I can get some money from my employer for doing that to me before? Pero syempre, it will put them in a difficult position if they're still working for that employer.
Correct. So yan nga, it puts them in a very awkward and some say vulnerable position. Kasi in truth, pwede nilang i-complain sa employer nila yan. Teka po, pwede pong ipakibalik po yung binayad ko for the LMIA. Bawal po ito. Ang consequences nito, legally speaking, may consequences talaga sa employer. Pwede silang mapatawan ng tinatawag na administrative monetary penalties na nahanap sa Section 209 and following of the regulations sa immigration nga. At pwede mo silang i-report sa immigration or sa Service Canada.
Okay.
Bina-violate nila ang kanilang LMIA. Hindi po pwede yan. But in reality, ito po kasi yung legal, but in reality, how brave are you?
Yeah, no one will actually do that, you know? Nobody will do that. Pero eto, Lou, what if throughout, nakahanap na ng paraan itong taong nagbayad noon, naging permanent resident na, and then he got away from that employer, found a different one, biglang naisip, pwede ko ba bang habulin yun? Yun.
Ang pagkakaalam ko, walang limitation period or prescription, tawag natin sa Pilipinas, limitation period for you to report. Kasi administrative, kasalanan to sa isang administrative rule. So, in theory, you can still report that former employer to ESTC, for example. Pero paano naman yung mga nag-ahawak pa ng work permit doon sa employers na yun?
Bago po natin ipagpatuloy yung episode na yan, just a short commercial. This channel, ito pong in a nutshell, is open for collaboration, guys. If you're interested in creating content with me, please contact Talentado Creative Agency o yung Talentado CA. Sila po ang mag-handle ng mga collaborations for in a nutshell. And for content creators looking for someone to help boost your channels, whether here on YouTube, on Facebook, TikTok, i-consider nyo po ang Talentado Agency. Matutulungan po kayo, ito ng anak ko, matutulungan po kayo in networking. Ako personally, ang dami ko na agad natutulan sa kapwa Talentado talents na nakausap ko na. Ang dami mga tips on how to improve and boost my channel. So yeah, ito po ang contact information ng Talentado CA, and I will also put it down in the description box if you're interested. Okay, back to episode.
Kaya sabi ko kanina, nag-hint ako, vulnerable. Siguro meron sa mga kababayan natin nakarinig na yung tinatawag na open work permit for vulnerable workers. May kaibigan kasi ako dati sa loob mismo ng IRCC na trinabaho yung pag-advocate ng pag-create ng tinatawag na open work permit for vulnerable workers. And ang nangyayari nga dito is pag mayroong employer abuse, tapos kayo ay nasa isang LMIA-based, closed, or employer-specific work permit, pwede po kayong magsampa ng ebidensya na may violation nga, na merong mga sunod-sunod na violations laban sa inyong mga karapatan bilang isang temporary foreign worker in Canada. Ano ba yung mga abuses? So kasama dito yung workplace abuse. Halimbawa, kung very abusive yung work environment, tas walang ginagawa yung employer ninyo about it. Halimbawa, may workplace bullying, ni-report mo, walang ginagawa, pero tatawanan ka pa. Kasi wala kang escape Kasi in a normal circumstance, technically, pwede ka lang magpalit ng employer. Kaso, foreign worker, hindi, di ba? So, tali ka. Pangalawa, halimbawa, ay withhold yung pay. Laging delay. Ganun. Or, worse, kinakaltasan yung sweldo ninyo para nga kunin yung LMIA cost.
Yan, okay.
Or, pinabayaran kayo ng below minimum. Or, halimbawa, ina-adhere nila yung kontrata up to 40 hours. So, sabi, oy, mag-overtime ka ng 15 hours, babayaran kita, pero babayaran lang kita ng cash. Wag mo nang i-report yan, ha? Ay, bawal po yan. Ito po ay grounds to apply for an open work permit. Pero hindi po dapat basta-basta mag-apply ng vulnerable work permit for these circumstances. Kailangan po may ebidensya tayo. So, ano po ba yung mga ebidensya na kakalapin natin? Ay, kung lalong madaling panahon, kailangan nyo nung umalis dun sa abusive situation, i-compile po ito, i-report po sa respective Ministry of Labor or mag-file po ng complaint sa small claims or sa Superior Court of your province. Dumulog po kayo sa mga legal clinic kung kailangan ninyo ng assistance from an employment lawyer. Kasi ito po yung employment law matter. At ito pong mga dokumento na maiipon ninyo sa pag-collect pa lang ng information, pwede nyo pong i-put together yan under seal of commissioner for taking affidavits. Sumpa ninyo, tapos isama ninyo sa evidence ninyo sa pag-apply for open work permit. May mandate po ang IRCC na weeks lang po dapat ang processing times ng open work permit for vulnerable workers. In the past, I've been able to secure these work permits in 2-3 weeks lang. So, meron po tayong out kapag abusive ang ating employer at nakatali po tayo doon. Huwag po tayong mag-despair. Meron din pong services ang Migrant Worker Office ng Philippines Consulate sa Vancouver and sa Toronto. Tingnan niyo po kung alin ang jurisdiction. Tawagan niyo po sila. Kung kailangan niyo po ng tulong, hindi niyo po alam kung saan na hihingi ng tulong, pupunta po sila sa inyo. Tatawagan po kayo. Tutulungan po nila kayo.
Okay. So, ayun kung makatsyempo kayo ng ganyang sitwasyon, ang hirap kasi, imagine, they come here and then that happens to them. Ang hirap You're in a foreign land, you don't know anybody.
Correct.
Oo, matatakot ka, uuwi na lang ba ako ng Pilipinas? Hindi naman ganun lang yun. Okay, I will not let you go, Lou, without asking this question. Hindi na to related dito. Naalala ko lang bigla. Merong mga paano ko ba sasabihin to? During the time when visitor to work permits transition ay posible pa. Kasi ngayon, bawal na po yan, okay? Merong mga kababayang nandito, naka-work permit, and then experienced, mga panloloko din. Pinangakuan na merong trabaho, nagbayad din sila. And these, sometimes the people they pay are not even consultants, not even our CIC.
Most of them actually.
Yung mga minsan kababayan lang talaga natin, nakakausap nila sa Facebook, pretending that they know an employer, ganito, ganyan. Now, they're here on visitor visa. Ano ang pwede nilang gawin pag maloko sila ng ganun? Obviously, nagbayad sila ng thousands of dollars, walang nakuhang employer. And now they're stuck here.
Pwede natin silang classify into 2 categories siguro. First is yung mga nakakuha na ng work permit. Kasi medyo matagal-tagal na tong policy na to.
Yeah.
Yung iba umusod na at nakatawid nga at nakuha nila yung work permit. May abuse na nangyari at posibleng continuous pa rin yung abuse with the employer kasi wag tayong magpaligoy-ligoy pa. Madami dito sa mga employers din na ito sila mismo yung authors, unfortunately, and gaya nga nasabi mo, and lagi ko ito nakikita, madalas kababayan pa natin yung mga abuso sa mga kapwa kababayan. Meron po kayong recourses, nabanggit ko po yung open work permit for vulnerable workers. Halimbawa, abusive po sila at kayo nasa LMIA closed work permit. Pwede po kayong kumuha ng open work permit for vulnerable workers. Dumulog po kayo, humingi kayo ng tulong sa mga legal clinics sa inyong city. Madami pong mga free legal clinics na nagtatakal ng employment law. Kung hindi nila alam, dumulog po kayo sa Migrant Worker Office ng Philippines Consulate. Tutulong po sila. And they will not make things public. This is private. Pangalawang grupo, yung mga naka-visitor visa pa. Ito yung problema. Kasi right now, wala na talagang way to transition into a work permit using this public policy. So, very risky, technically speaking, pwede pa rin silang mag-flagpole. Pero kung nakita nyo na ako sa ibang channels, I am not an advocate for flagpoling. I actually advocate against it, and it is only a measure of last resort. Kung talagang nagmamadali, wala na talagang options at kailangan talagang gawin, pwede. Kasi makikita naman ng CBSA officer na talagang natulak siya hanggang sa pader. Kailangan niya na talagang gawin. And in that situation, usually yung CBSA officers, pag naintindihan na, okay, gets, tutulungan kita kasi very sympathetic yung case mo. Kasi napaka-busy talaga ng mga CBSA officers. So, meron, pero mahirap.
Hirap oo nga.
There are circumstances, halimbawa, meron ka bang US visa. Kung meron kang US visa, the port of entry application option might actually be okay to a certain extent kung malinis yung iyong immigration record, kung maayos yung iyong pasok. Kasi remember, even those na maayos ang pasok, tapos nag-flagpole, merong mga cases na because they have said something different during their visa application.
Yeah.
Hinahalongkat ng CBSA officer. Sabihin, nag-apply ka nung nasa Manila ka pa. Sabi mo, bibisitahin mo lang ang tiyahin mo. Ba't mo na dito? Ba't nakawalong buwan ka? Anong ginagawa mo? So, automatic yan, default, iniisip nila, nagtatrabaho ka na kahit hindi pa. So, talagang very cornered ka, diba? So, ingat-ingat lang po tayo pagdating sa ganyan. So, ano pang option nila? Abay, if that's the case, nakakuha sila ng LMIA, ang pinakamagandang option nila ay umuwi sila ng Pilipinas. Tapos, from there, mag-apply sila ng work permit. At yung story dito is they have to contend with the requirements of the Department of Migrant Workers ng Philippines naman kasi may mga exit requirements. Pero this is your safest way. Yun nga lang, syempre, kadalasan ng mga employers, impatient din, kailangan mag-start kagad. So, you have to balance these factors kung ano ba talaga yung best, approach. So, in other words, long story short, may options ka as a visitor. Ultimate option is the flag polling, in my opinion. Pero yung least riskiest way is uwi po tayo. Tapos, gawin po natin siya sa Philippines. Question din dito. Yung 8 months...
Hindi, wala nang may employer Lamia eh. Wala na talaga. They were left hanging. Wala no?
Wala talaga. Kailangan natin ng authorization to work in order to start work in Canada. So, yun nga eh. Pero may mga bagong circumstances ako nakikita kasi alam naman natin, usong-uso yung mga virtual assistant, mga remote work.
Yeah, okay.
So, itong mga taong to, technically, mga digital nomads sila, limbawa yung mga contracts mo galing sa US or sa Australia or sa UK, tapos nasa Canada ka, naka-visitor record ka, technically, pwede yan eh. Tignan po ninyo, digital nomad visa. Wala po tayong technical term for digital nomad visa under the regs, pero brinand lang po ng IRCC na yung mga digital nomads po, welcome po to come to Canada for 6 months or less stay. And you can work remotely from Canada. Kasi work is legally defined in the regulations. Sabi ng regulations, work is if you are a foreign national and you are in Canada, but what you're doing is taking an opportunity away from a Canadian or a permanent resident, that is work. So, hindi ibig sabihin na kailangan bayad ka. Even volunteering technically could fall within that scope, ha? Pero kung halimbawa, ako, virtual assistant ako, tapos yung principal ko nasa Australia, tapos I decide, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go to my tita sa Vancouver kasi mas maayos ang internet, for example, kesa sa Bacolod, for example. Tapos doon muna ako for 3 months. Tapos enjoy ko muna yung lamig, for example. Is that work? Do you need a visa? Actually, no. So, in theory, even yung mga visitors na naghihintay ng trabaho, gusto mag-transition in Canada, they can do digital nomad work in Canada.
Really?
So long as the contract is not from Canada, ha? May mga ganyang circumstances. Kasi once yung contract mo or yung client...
Technically, yung status nila dito, and how long can they do that for?
Visitor.
Really? Okay.
They stay for up to 6 months yung first entry nila. Now, if they want to stay for more than 6 months, immigration-wise, they just apply for a visitor record and explain nila na I am self-employed, I am a contractor for this company in Australia. Except, ito yan second aspect na to legally speaking, because you are residing physically in Canada for so long, you might become a tax resident in Canada. So, tawag po tayo sa accountants in Canada. Baka may tax implication po ito.
Okay.
So, pero at the end of the day, you can technically do it. I've assisted clients na they have contracts in the United States, for example, tapos nasa Canada sila for like 1.5 years. Kasi mas akma yung time zone nila, so mas nadadalian, halimbawa. Ganun.
Yun. Ngayon ko lang narinig yun, Maybe we can have a separate episode on that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Lou. Sana marami ring naliwanagan. At you presented so many options for pag-stay dito sa Canada. Sana makatulong tayo. Thank you so much. Abangan din natin ang development nito. I don't know if it's gonna take long pa ba pag ganito, Lou. Ang tagal na kasi, no?
I wouldn't hold my breath, pero the fact na meron ng ruling on the liability aspects, feeling ko baka pumunta na to sa summary judgment. Pwedeng mag-move for summary judgment if malinaw yung facts. Ibig po sabihin ng summary judgment is magro-rule yung court without a full hearing of the facts. And yun nga, nangyayari ito kung malinaw talaga yung mga malinaw yung mga issues na kailangan resolvehin at kaya nang gawin in a summary procedure. At kung mangyayari ito, mag-determine ng award ang court. At yun nga, mag-announce yung law firm na, oy, may payout, claim the amount. Ito yung entitlement.
Usually, Lou, let's say, kasi ang sinasabi, about $8,000 yung binayad. Pag ganyan, how much yung compensation na binibigay? Way more than that. Kasi for all the hassle, yung inconvenience.
So, kakalkulahin nga nila yun. So, actually, isa sa mga questions dito is, how did the court and the plaintiffs determine the class? So, kung titignan niyo yung history ng case, kaya napakatagal niya kasi may mga determination yung courts pa na teka, itong IRCC ba at ESDC, are they subject to the orders of the provincial courts? Kasi federal agencies ito, di ba? Aren't you supposed to do this at the federal courts? May mga jurisdictional questions yan. So, in the end, na-i-produce din yung listahan ng mga naging alleged victims ng agency. So, pag na-determine na yung individuals, pati yung contact information nila, it is up to the plaintiff class lawyers to contact and make public na merong class action suit at kukontakin nga nila na you might be eligible, you're automatically enrolled unless you opt out. Ngayon, halimbawa, nakadetermine sila, meron po tayong 200 members of this class. Kung ano po yung award, i-divide po amongst them. At kung po yung announcement ng law firm, syempre, sabi nila, well, this is a this is a contingency fee agreement. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? Ibig sabihin nito is, hindi po kayo magbabayad as member of the class. Pero once na i-award na po itong damages on the whole by the court, meron po silang cut dun sa award. So very different po ito sa mga employment law situations.
I see. So, maghahati-hati pala. Dami rin nila, kung sakali.
Correct. Yeah. So, kung hindi tayo, ganun. So, may mga ibang class action suits, halimbawa sa consumers, so under the Consumer Protection Acts of various provinces. Halimbawa, dinamanda si Danone, yung pagpagagawa ng yogurt. Tapos merong payout. O yung payout is like makakatanggap kayo ng voucher this amount.
May ganun din. Tama.
May mga ganun, yung $25. So, kasi nga ang dami ninyo across Canada, million ang bilangan nito. Pero kung million yung award, tapos hundreds kayo or libo-libo, do the math.
Malaki yun, oo.
Pero usually naman kasi yung mga damages sa court sa Canada, hindi po kagaya sa US na naririnig natin millions and millions. Kailangan po ito is yung tinatawag na standard general damages and yung compensatory damages nga ho. Kung ano ba talaga yung actual damages na nasuffer ninyo. So, halimbawa, binayad nyo 8,000, tapos syempre, kinaltasan pa kayo. Kalkulahin yan. Pero average nila yan kasi ito ay class action suit.
Yan, okay. I'm just not familiar pala, Lou, what happened to the foreign workers na dumating dito. Hindi ko na nakita ano bang nangyari sa kanila.
So, there's a huge possibility that a lot of them are not even in Canada. Kaya nga,
I think so eh. By the way, may Pilipinong kasama na nagkaso pala. Nakita ko.
Yeah. So, sabi nga nung isang colleague ko, si Andrew Colton, who's actually a lawyer, and if you need their contact, kasi he pursues errand consultants, agents, unauthorized representatives, even lawyers, and employment agencies who are liable. Ganun din ang ginagawa niya. Sabi niya, actually nga, sobrang dehado yung mga temporary foreign workers kasi una sa lahat, di nila alam kung ano rights nila. Pangalawa, paminsan pipilitan silang umuwi eh, di ba?
Yeah. Di nila alam, may option pa sila that will allow them to stay.
Yes, sabi, ni-recognize yun sa case ruling na ito ng 2024 nga, sabi nila na, wait, may duty ba to mitigate yung employees? Ano ba ibig sabihin nito? It sounds Greek. Ibig sabihin po ng duty to mitigate is kayo po yung nagsasuffer ng damages dahil sa ginawa or sa action or abuses ng employer ninyo. Meron po kayong responsibilidad na kailangan gumawa kayo ng paraan para hindi lumaki yung damages ninyo. In other words, diba kung may butas yung bubong ko, yung contractor ko may kasalanan, hindi ko pa babayaan na tumulo lang yung tubig. Siyempre, try kong pigilan yan. Yun yung duty to mitigate ko. So, yung employee, meron bang duty to mitigate? And usually, it's in the way of like looking for another employer. Abay, ano natin, papasok sila foreign worker, kailangan ng LMI, kailangan ng work permit.
Naka-close permit pa sila, technically.
Di ba? Magagalaw. So, ang ruling na important din ng court dito is meron ba silang duty to mitigate? Given the circumstances, no. And because actually nakakatuwa, yung sabi nung court, normally hindi ginagamit ito ng common law courts like British Columbia. Civil law courts lang yan like sa Philippines or sa Quebec or sa France. Sabi nila contract of adhesion, yung employment contract. So ano ibig sabihin nito? Yung contract na yun, isang party lang yung nagsusulat. Yung employer, yung agency, ikaw taga-pirma ka lang. You accept it as is or not. Diba? Yan lang. Yung option mo is yes or no. So dahil doon, yung negotiation or bargaining power mo as an employee, napakababa. Sobrang position of power sa employer, ikaw hindi. So yung itong si judge, interpret niya yung contract against the employer in your favor as the weaker party. Yun yung conscionability interpretation nung contract niya. And in effect, yung important dito is yung takeaway nga is like walang duty to mitigate yung foreign worker kasi paano nga naman sila mag-mitigate? Kung mag-mitigate sila, illegal po ito. Unless makakuha sila ng LMI, naggastos na naman sila dahil sa kanilang work permit, etc. etc.
Yeah. Okay, nako. Medyo naging no? Baka nahirapan yung iba po nating viewers to pick up. Pero nako, thank you so much, Lou. Maybe we can consult you with other matters in the future for another episode.
Would be a great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So we will end this episode here. Thank you, Lou. We will see you guys in the next one. Bye!